You are not lacking talent. You are not lacking intelligence. You are not lacking potential. You are lacking trust. Not trust in the world. Not trust in other people. Trust in yourself. Self-doubt is the invisible force that keeps capable people stuck, silent, and second-guessing their every move. It doesn't scream. It whispers. And over time, those whispers steal your confidence, your clarity, and your momentum. This audiobook is about ending that war. Because the moment you build big trust, deep trust in your decisions, your instincts, and your ability to adapt, everything changes. Your leadership changes. Your confidence changes. Your life changes. And it starts now. Chapter 1. Stop questioning yourself. You question yourself more than you realize. You question your decisions. You question your instincts. You question your timing. And you tell yourself this is intelligence. You tell yourself this is caution. You tell yourself this is maturity. It is not. Self-doubt is not humility. Self-doubt is hesitation disguised as intelligence. That is the truth. The most capable people doubt themselves the most because they think deeply, analyze everything, and see all possible outcomes. But deep thinking without commitment becomes paralysis. And paralysis is not wisdom. Paralysis is fear wearing a smart mask. You have a choice. You can keep questioning yourself and call it being careful. Or you can recognize what it really is and stop. That is the key. Look around. The world is not led by the smartest thinkers. The world is led by the fastest deciders. Not because they are better than you, but because they trust themselves sooner. You do not lose confidence because you fail. You lose confidence because you hesitate. Every time you pause, after you already know what to do, you weaken trust in yourself. Every time you delay, waiting for certainty, you teach your mind that it cannot rely on you. That is how self-doubt grows. You wait to feel ready. You wait to feel confident. You wait to feel sure. But clarity does not come before commitment. Clarity comes after commitment, not before it. Say it again. Clarity comes after commitment, not before it. That is not motivation. That is reality. High performers do not act because they are confident. They are confident because they act. Less capable people move forward boldly, not because they know more, but because they decide faster. Meanwhile, intelligent, capable, thoughtful people stay stuck, replaying scenarios, running simulations, and questioning their own judgment. You see the irony. You think deeply, so you hesitate. You hesitate, so you stall. You stall, so you lose momentum. You lose momentum, so doubt takes over. That loop is not intelligence. That loop is self-sabotage. You have a choice. You do not need their permission. You do not need perfect information. You do not need absolute certainty. You need to decide. Most people think confidence is something you feel. It is not. Confidence is something you build through action. Every decision you avoid strengthens self-doubt. Every decision you make strengthens self-trust. That is the trade. And yes, you will be wrong sometimes. That is not the problem. The problem is this. You have trained yourself to believe that being wrong is worse than being stuck. It is not. Being wrong teaches you. Being stuck drains you. That is the key. Right now, your mind is constantly asking, what if I choose wrong? What if I fail? What if this does not work? Those questions sound intelligent. They sound responsible. They sound mature. But here is the truth. Those questions do not protect you. They trap you. The better question is this: what happens if I keep waiting? What happens if you keep questioning yourself? What happens if you keep outsourcing decisions to opinions, approvals, and reassurance? What happens if you keep delaying action until confidence magically appears? You already know the answer. Nothing changes. You stay capable but unseen, prepared but inactive, intelligent but underutilized. It is not about intelligence. It is about discipline. Say it again. It is not about intelligence. It is about discipline. Discipline to decide. Discipline to act. Discipline to move forward, even when fear is present. Fear does not disappear first. Action comes first. You do not need their permission. Look at real life. High performers freeze before decisions, while less capable people move forward boldly. Not because the bold are reckless, but because they accept something you resist. They accept that mistakes are part of movement. You are trying to eliminate mistakes before you move. That is backwards. You are waiting for confidence to earn action. Action is what earns confidence. That is the key. Your mind wants guarantees. Life does not offer them. So every time you demand certainty before acting, you are asking for something that does not exist. And when it does not arrive, you interpret that absence as a warning. It is not a warning. It is reality. Successful people do not have fewer doubts. They have fewer debates with those doubts. They do not argue with every thought. They do not interrogate every instinct. They decide, then adjust. That is big trust. Big trust is not believing you will always be right. Big trust is trusting yourself to respond, adapt, and recover. You have a choice. You can treat every decision as a final judgment on your worth, or you can treat decisions as data. One traps you, one frees you. You do not need to be perfect. You need to be decisive. Perfectionism is fear, pretending to be high standards. Overthinking is fear, pretending to be preparation. It is not about overthinking. It is about execution. Say it clearly. It is not about overthinking. It is about execution. Here is what you must stop doing. Stop replaying decisions after you have already made them. Stop asking for reassurance after you already know your answer. Stop second-guessing actions that are already in motion. Every time you do that, you fracture self-trust. Instead, do this. Decide, act, adjust. Decide, act, adjust. That is the rhythm of confident people. You do not wait to feel ready. You move, and readiness catches up. Your brain learns from evidence, not intention. When you act despite doubt, you give your brain proof that you can be trusted. That is how self-trust is built. Slowly, deliberately, through action, not through thinking harder. You have been trying to think your way into confidence. It does not work. Confidence is physical. It is behavioral. It is built in motion. That is the key. Right now, there is a decision you are avoiding. You know exactly what it is. You have analyzed it. You have imagined outcomes. You have played it safe inside your head. Now, you must do something different. You must choose, not because it feels safe, but because staying stuck is costing you more than moving forward. Every delayed decision has a price. Lost time, lost energy, lost self-belief. And that cost compounds. You do not need their permission. You do not need consensus. You do not need to explain yourself to everyone. You need to trust yourself enough to take the next step. That is big trust. Big trust does not mean blind confidence. It means grounded commitment. It means saying, this is my best decision with the information I have right now. And that is enough. If it works, you build momentum. If it does not, you build experience. Either way, you move forward. That is the mindset shift. You stop questioning yourself, not by silencing doubt, but by outgrowing it. Doubt shrinks when action expands. Say it again. Clarity comes after commitment, not before it. That sentence must become your rule. Anytime you feel stuck, anytime you feel unsure, anytime you feel tempted to wait, remember this. Waiting does not make you safer. Waiting makes you smaller. You have a choice. Choose movement. Choose action. Choose to trust yourself enough to decide, because self-doubt does not disappear when you think more. It disappears when you prove to yourself that you can act. That is the lesson of this chapter. And now we go deeper, because once you stop questioning yourself, you must understand where that doubt came from in the first place. In the next chapter, you will learn this truth. Self-doubt is not who you are. It is what you were taught. And once you see that clearly, everything changes. Chapter 2, self-doubt is learned, not inherited. You were not born doubting yourself. You were not born questioning your worth. You were not born afraid of being wrong. Self-doubt is not genetic. It is not destiny. It is not who you are. Self-doubt was trained into you. That is the truth. If that makes you uncomfortable, good, because discomfort signals clarity. You came into this world curious, expressive, and unfiltered. You acted before you thought. You spoke before you calculated. You tried without asking permission. Then something happened. You were corrected. You were compared. You were criticized. You were conditioned. Slowly, repeatedly, subtly, and over time, you learned a dangerous lesson. Approval equals safety. Disapproval equals danger. That lesson shaped everything. You have a choice. You can keep blaming yourself for the doubt you feel, or you can recognize where it came from and take your power back. That is the key. Most people treat self-doubt like a personal flaw. They think, something is wrong with me. I lack confidence. I am just not wired that way. That is false. You were taught to doubt yourself through systems that rewarded obedience, perfection, and compliance. You were taught to hesitate before speaking. You were taught to check reactions before trusting instincts. That training did not happen in one moment. It happened over years. A look of disappointment, a comparison to someone else, a reward for being quiet instead of bold, and your nervous system adapted. You learned to scan. You learned to hesitate. You learned to please. That was survival, not weakness. But survival patterns outlive their usefulness. You have a choice. You can keep operating from outdated conditioning, or you can rewire it. If it was learned, it can be unlearned. Say it again. If it was learned, it can be unlearned. That sentence matters, because once you understand that self-doubt is learned behavior, it stops being a life sentence and becomes a habit you can break. Look at your childhood. Were you praised for performance or for effort? Were you rewarded for obedience or for initiative? Were mistakes treated as learning or as failure? These experiences shaped how you lead yourself today. If love felt conditional, you learned to perform. If approval felt scarce, you learned to compete. If mistakes felt unsafe, you learned to overthink. And now, as an adult, you call these patterns personality. They are not. They are programming. That is the key. You still seek permission because once permission meant safety. You still fear judgment because once judgment meant consequences. You still hesitate because once hesitation protected you. But you are not there anymore. You do not need their permission. You are no longer a child waiting for approval. You are no longer dependent on external validation. You are capable, autonomous, and responsible. But your nervous system did not get that update. So now, when you face decisions, your body reacts before your logic. You feel tension. You feel doubt. You feel resistance. And you assume that feeling means danger. It does not. It means memory. That is the distinction you must understand. Self-doubt is not intuition. Self-doubt is conditioned fear. Intuition is calm. Self-doubt is loud. Intuition moves you forward. Self-doubt freezes you. That is the key. Here is the problem. You keep trying to eliminate doubt by thinking harder. But doubt was not created by logic. It was created by experience. So it cannot be undone by thinking alone. It must be undone by new behavior. You have a choice. You can keep explaining your doubt, or you can interrupt it. Here is how self-doubt was reinforced. Every time you hesitated and avoided discomfort, your brain learned, hesitation keeps me safe. Every time you sought reassurance and felt relief, your brain learned, approval equals security. Every time you stayed quiet and avoided risk, your brain learned, silence prevents pain. Those patterns worked once. They do not work now. Now, they limit you. It is not about confidence. It is about conditioning. Say it clearly. It is not about confidence. It is about conditioning. And conditioning can be changed, but only through action. You must do the opposite of what doubt demands. Doubt says, wait. You act. Doubt says, seek approval. You decide alone. Doubt says, play safe. You stretch slightly. That is how rewiring happens. Not through affirmations. Not through visualization. Through repeated corrective experience. That is the key. You must become your own evidence. Right now, your brain has evidence for hesitation. You must give it evidence for self-trust. Small actions, clear decisions, kept promises. Each one weakens old conditioning. Here is what you must stop doing. Stop labeling yourself as insecure. Stop saying, that is just how I am. Stop protecting old patterns that no longer serve you. That identity keeps you stuck. Instead, say this. This was learned, and what was learned can be unlearned. Say it again. If it was learned, it can be unlearned. That phrase must become your anchor. Now, practical instruction. When you feel self-doubt rise, do not ask, what is wrong with me? Ask this instead. Where did I learn this response? That question creates space. Then ask the next question. Is this pattern still useful right now? Most of the time, the answer is no. Then comes the discipline. Act anyway, not recklessly, not impulsively, deliberately. Choose one small action that contradicts the doubt. Speak once when you would normally stay silent. Decide once without asking for reassurance. Move once before feeling ready. That is how reprogramming happens. You do not need their permission. Every time you act without permission, you reclaim authority over yourself. Authority builds trust. Trust builds confidence. That is the sequence. Confidence is not the cause. Confidence is the result. Say it clearly. Confidence is the result, not the cause. You have been waiting for confidence to take action. Action is what rewires confidence. That is the key. Understand this. Your inner critic is not evil. It is outdated. It is a voice built to protect you in an environment that no longer exists. So you do not fight it. You outgrow it. You show it evidence. Evidence that you can act. Evidence that you can recover. Evidence that you can handle discomfort. Each time you do that, doubt loses authority. You become the reference point. That is big trust. Big trust means trusting yourself more than your conditioning. It means choosing present truth over past programming. You have a choice. You can live according to old rules, or you can write new ones. Old rule: do not make mistakes. New rule: learn fast and adjust. Old rule: be approved. New rule: be aligned. Old rule: stay safe. New rule: grow deliberately. It is not about fear. It is about discipline. Say it again. It is not about fear. It is about discipline. Discipline to act differently when doubt appears. Discipline to interrupt patterns instead of obeying them. Discipline to rewire instead of repeat. That is your work. And it is not dramatic. It is consistent. Small daily acts of self-trust. That is how big trust is built. You stop seeing doubt as truth. You start seeing it as habit. Habits can be changed, but only by doing. That is the lesson of this chapter. You were not born doubting yourself. You were trained. And what was trained can be untrained. If it was learned, it can be unlearned. Say it one last time. If it was learned, it can be unlearned. Now, you are ready for the next layer. Because once you understand where doubt came from, you must face the habit that keeps it alive. Overthinking. In the next chapter, you will learn why overthinking is not intelligence, but avoidance. And why clarity only arrives after you move. That is where we go next. Chapter 3. The hidden cost of overthinking. You think a lot. You analyze deeply. You consider every angle. And you tell yourself, this is productivity. It is not. Overthinking is not preparation. Overthinking is avoidance dressed up as intelligence. That is the truth. Overthinking feels safe because it feels active. Your mind is busy. Your thoughts are moving. Your imagination is working. But your body is still. Your life is still. Your decisions are delayed. That is the hidden cost. You have a choice. You can keep thinking and call it being responsible, or you can recognize the pattern and interrupt it. That is the key. Thinking without action creates fear. Action creates trust. Say it again. Thinking without action creates fear. Action creates trust. Every time you think without moving, fear grows. Every time you move, despite uncertainty, trust grows. That is not theory. That is biology. Your nervous system does not respond to thoughts. It responds to evidence. And right now, the evidence you keep giving yourself is this. I think a lot, but I do not act. So your brain learns something dangerous. It learns that you cannot be relied on. That is how confidence drains away. Overthinking trains hesitation. Hesitation trains doubt. Doubt trains inaction. And inaction becomes your identity. You start to believe this is just how you are. It is not. It is a habit. And habits have consequences. You miss opportunities. You delay conversations. You hesitate on decisions. Not because you are incapable, but because you are waiting for certainty. Certainty never arrives. That is the trap. Most missed opportunities are not lost because of failure. They are lost because of waiting. Waiting to feel ready. Waiting to feel sure. Waiting to feel confident. You wait, and life moves on. You have a choice. You can wait for clarity, or you can create it. Clarity does not come from thinking more. Clarity comes from moving forward. That is the key. Overthinking gives you the illusion of control. But control is not the same as progress. You replay conversations that have already happened. You imagine outcomes that may never occur. You predict reactions instead of testing reality. And while you are thinking, someone else is doing, not because they are smarter than you, but because they tolerate uncertainty better than you. That is the difference. It is not about intelligence. It is about discipline. Say it clearly. It is not about intelligence. It is about discipline. Discipline to stop thinking and start acting. Discipline to accept discomfort instead of avoiding it. Discipline to move before confidence arrives. That is what overthinkers resist. Here is the real cost of overthinking. You lose momentum. You lose self-trust. You lose time. Time is the most expensive cost. Every delayed decision compounds doubt. Every avoided action reinforces fear. And the longer you wait, the harder it feels to move. That is how people get stuck for years. Not because they are lazy, not because they are incapable, but because they overthink. Overthinking is fear, trying to stay hidden. That is the key. Your mind says, just think a little more. Just wait a little longer. Just be sure. Fear loves those words, because fear knows something. The longer you think, the less likely you are to act. You do not need their permission. You do not need perfect information. You need a decision. Most of your decisions are reversible, but hesitation feels irreversible. You treat small choices like life sentences. That is not intelligence. That is fear management. Here is the pattern. You feel uncertainty. You think more. You feel worse. So you think even more. That loop never ends. Thinking does not resolve emotional uncertainty. Action does. Thinking without action creates fear. Action creates trust. Say it again. Thinking without action creates fear. Action creates trust. That sentence must interrupt you. Anytime you catch yourself overthinking, you must ask one question. What action am I avoiding? That question exposes the truth. Overthinking is not the problem. Avoidance is the problem. Once you identify the avoided action, you must do something uncomfortable, small, deliberate, immediate. Send the message. Make the call. Take the step. Not to be perfect, but to create movement. Movement dissolves overthinking. That is the key. You have trained your brain to believe that thinking equals safety. You must retrain it to believe that action equals safety. Safety does not come from certainty. Safety comes from competence. Competence is built through experience. Experience requires action. There is no shortcut. Here is what you must stop doing. Stop rehearsing outcomes you cannot control. Stop replaying past mistakes. Stop delaying decisions that are already clear. That behavior is costing you confidence. Instead, do this. Set a thinking limit. Give yourself a clear window. 10 minutes, 30 minutes, 1 hour. Then decide. No extensions. No negotiations. Decision builds trust, even if the decision is imperfect. Especially then. You have a choice. You can keep waiting for confidence, or you can generate it. Confidence is not a feeling. It is a byproduct of action. Say it clearly. Confidence is a byproduct of action. You do not think your way into courage. You act your way into it. Overthinking wants guarantees. Life demands engagement. You must choose which one you serve. Guarantees do not exist. Engagement does. Every confident person you admire once stood where you are. Unsure, unclear, uncertain. They did not wait. They moved, and movement changed them. That is the difference. You do not need their permission. You do not need validation. You need repetition. Small acts of decisive behavior, repeated daily. That is how overthinking loses power. Your brain learns something new. When I act, nothing catastrophic happens. When I decide, I can adjust. When I move, I survive. That evidence rewires fear. Fear does not respond to logic. Fear responds to experience. That is the key. Here is a simple rule. If you are thinking about the same thing for more than 2 days without action, you are avoiding. Call it what it is. Then act. Action does not mean reckless leaps. It means controlled exposure. One step beyond comfort. One decision without rehearsal. One move before certainty. That is how trust is built. Trust is built in motion. Say it again. Trust is built in motion. Overthinking collapses when motion begins, because motion gives feedback. Feedback gives clarity. Clarity gives confidence, but only after you move. Clarity comes after commitment, not before it. You already learned that. This chapter reinforces it. Overthinking delays commitment. Commitment creates clarity. That is the cycle. You have a choice. You can live inside your head, or you can live inside your life. Thinking is not living. Acting is. You have missed opportunities not because you lacked talent, but because you waited too long. You waited for a feeling that never arrived. Stop waiting. Decide. Move. Adjust. That is big trust. Big trust means trusting yourself enough to act without certainty. Big trust means believing that you can handle the outcome, whatever it is. That belief is built, not imagined, built through action. Thinking without action creates fear. Action creates trust. One last time. Thinking without action creates fear. Action creates trust. That is the lesson. And now, you are ready for the next layer. Because once you stop overthinking, you must face something even deeper. Acceptance. Not resignation. Not weakness. Truth. In the next chapter, you will learn why acceptance is not giving up, but the foundation of control. And why you cannot change what you refuse to accept. That is where we go next. Chapter 4. Acceptance is not weakness. You avoid acceptance because you think it means giving up. You think it means surrender. You think it means admitting defeat. It does not. Acceptance is not weakness. Acceptance is clarity. That is the truth. Acceptance means telling the truth about where you are without shame, without excuses, and without resistance. It means looking directly at reality instead of arguing with it. Most people do the opposite. They deny. They minimize. They distract. They pretend. And they call that strength. It is not. Denial is not strength. Avoidance is not resilience. Pretending is not confidence. Acceptance is strength. That is the key. You cannot change what you refuse to accept. Say it again. You cannot change what you refuse to accept. Every transformation starts with truth, not motivation, not positivity. Truth. If you do not name the fear, it controls you. If you do not name the weakness, it grows. If you do not name the problem, it repeats. You have a choice. You can keep resisting reality and stay stuck, or you can accept reality and start moving. That is the choice. Most people resist acceptance because they confuse it with resignation. They think acceptance means settling. It does not. Acceptance means starting from where you actually are, not where you wish you were. You cannot build confidence on top of denial. You cannot build trust on top of lies. You cannot build strength on top of avoidance. That is the key. Look at strong leaders, real leaders. They do not pretend to be fearless. They do not deny uncertainty. They do not hide discomfort. They name it. I am afraid. I am unsure. I do not know yet. And because they name it, they move through it faster. That is why they grow faster. Fear that is named loses power. Fear that is hidden controls behavior. You have a choice. You can keep hiding from discomfort, or you can face it directly. Facing it does not make you weak. Facing it makes you precise. Precision is power. Acceptance sharpens focus. When you stop fighting reality, your energy returns. When you stop arguing with what is, you can finally decide what to do next. Most people are exhausted, not because life is hard, but because they are resisting truth. They resist where they are. They resist how they feel. They resist what they fear. Resistance drains energy. Acceptance restores it. That is the key. You cannot outrun reality. You cannot outthink reality. You cannot positive think reality away. Reality must be faced. And once it is faced, it can be shaped, but not before. You cannot change what you refuse to accept. Say it again. You cannot change what you refuse to accept. Here is how avoidance shows up. You say, I am fine, when you are not. You say, it will work out without a plan. You say, I will deal with it later. Later becomes never, and the cost compounds. Leaders who grow faster do one thing differently. They stop denying fear, and they start naming it. They say, I am afraid of failing. I am afraid of judgment. I am afraid of losing control. And then they ask the right question. What am I going to do anyway? That is power. Fear acknowledged is manageable. Fear ignored is destructive. That is the difference. You have a choice. You can let fear operate in the background, or you can bring it into the light. Light weakens fear. Silence strengthens it. You do not need their permission to tell yourself the truth. You do not need approval to admit uncertainty. You do not need validation to acknowledge weakness. Weakness named becomes strength. Uncertainty named becomes strategy. That is the key. Acceptance is not saying, this is who I am forever. Acceptance is saying, this is where I am right now. There is a difference. One is fixed. One is flexible. Acceptance gives you leverage. If you deny your starting point, every step forward feels unstable. If you accept your starting point, you can build solid footing. That is how confidence is built, not through pretending, through honesty. It is not about positivity. It is about precision. Say it clearly. It is not about positivity. It is about precision. Positive thinking without acceptance becomes delusion. Acceptance without action becomes stagnation. You need both. Accept first. Act second. Never reverse that order. Here is what you must stop doing. Stop lying to yourself about what you feel. Stop minimizing discomfort to appear strong. Stop ignoring signals that something needs attention. Those behaviors delay growth. Instead, do this. Name the truth out loud, clearly. I am afraid. I am overwhelmed. I am unsure. Do not judge it. Do not justify it. Just name it. That is acceptance. Then comes the next step. Ask this question. Given this reality, what is my next best move? Not the perfect move. Not the fearless move. The next move. That question shifts you from emotion to agency. Agency restores control. That is big trust. Big trust does not mean never feeling fear. Big trust means trusting yourself to face fear honestly. Most people think confidence is the absence of fear. It is not. Confidence is the ability to act without lying to yourself. That is the key. When you accept where you are, you stop wasting energy on pretending. That energy becomes available for problem solving. That is why acceptance accelerates growth. Leaders who deny reality make fragile plans. Leaders who accept reality make resilient plans. Resilience beats optimism. Optimism says, it will be fine. Acceptance says, this is what is happening. Now let us deal with it. One avoids. One engages. Engagement builds trust. You have a choice. You can keep resisting reality and feel powerless, or you can accept reality and regain control. Control begins with truth. Truth is not emotional. Truth is factual, and facts are workable. Denial is not workable. That is the key. Right now, there is something you are avoiding admitting. You already know what it is. A fear, a limitation, a situation. You feel tension because you are resisting it. Stop resisting. Name it. Acceptance does not make the problem bigger. It makes it clearer. Clarity reduces fear. Uncertainty fuels fear. When leaders say, I do not know, they are not weak. They are precise. Precision builds credibility. Pretending erodes it. You do not need their permission to be honest with yourself. You do not need to look strong. You need to be effective. Effectiveness comes from accuracy. Acceptance is accuracy. That is the discipline. Say it clearly. It is not about toughness. It is about truth. Truth gives you options. Lies trap you. Acceptance unlocks options. Once you accept fear, you can design courage. Once you accept limitation, you can build skill. Once you accept reality, you can change it, but never before. You cannot change what you refuse to accept. One more time. You cannot change what you refuse to accept. This must become your rule. Anytime you feel stuck, anytime you feel frustrated, anytime you feel drained, ask yourself this. What am I refusing to accept? That question cuts through confusion. And when you answer honestly, something shifts. Resistance drops. Energy returns. Movement begins. That is big trust. Big trust starts with radical honesty. With yourself. Not dramatic honesty. Not self-punishing honesty. Come honesty. This is where I am. This is how I feel. This is what I know right now. From that place, action becomes clear. Acceptance is not the end. It is the beginning. It is the foundation. Everything else is built on. And now, you are ready for the next step. Because once you accept reality, you must claim responsibility. Not blame. Not guilt. Agency. In the next chapter, You will learn why agency begins the moment you decide, and how taking responsibility restores your power immediately. That is where we go next. Chapter 5. Agency begins the moment you decide. You feel powerless, not because you lack ability, but because you delay responsibility. That is the truth. Agency is not control. Agency is not dominance. Agency is not certainty. Agency is the belief that you have influence, even when conditions are not perfect. That belief changes everything. You do not control everything, but you control your response. Say it again. You do not control everything, but you control your response. That is the key. Most people wait for better conditions before they act. They wait for clarity. They wait for permission. They wait for confidence. And while they wait, they slowly hand their power away. Power does not disappear. It gets outsourced to circumstances, to people, to timing, to excuses. You have a choice. You can live as a reactor responding to life, or you can live as an agent shaping your response. One keeps you small. One restores your power. Agency begins the moment you decide, not when things improve, not when fear disappears, not when approval arrives. The moment you decide. That is the difference between leaders and passengers. Passengers blame the road. Leaders steer. You do not need their permission. Look at how most people talk. They did this to me. The system is unfair. I had no choice. Those sentences feel true. They feel justified. They feel relieving. But they destroy agency. Blame feels good because it removes responsibility. But the moment you remove responsibility, you also remove power. Power and responsibility come together. You cannot have one without the other. That is the key. Professionals reclaim confidence the moment they choose responsibility over blame. Not because circumstances change, but because identity changes. They stop asking, "Why did this happen to me?" and start asking, "What am I going to do about it?" That question restores agency. Agency restores confidence. Confidence restores momentum. That is the sequence. You have been taught something dangerous. You were taught that responsibility means fault, that if you take responsibility, you admit failure. That is false. Responsibility is not guilt. Responsibility is ownership. Ownership gives you options. Blame gives you excuses. You have a choice. You can protect your ego, or you can reclaim your power. Protecting your ego feels safe. Reclaiming your power feels uncomfortable. But discomfort is the price of agency. That is the key. You do not control everything, but you control your response. Say it again. You do not control everything, but you control your response. Life will disrupt you. People will disappoint you. Plans will break. That is not negotiable. What is negotiable is how long you stay passive. The moment you say, "This is happening, now what?" you step back into agency. Most people confuse acceptance with passivity, but acceptance is not passivity. Acceptance is accurate awareness. Agency comes after acceptance. Once you accept reality, you must decide how to respond. That decision is power. You do not need perfect conditions to act powerfully. You need clarity of responsibility. Here is the hard truth. Every time you say, "I cannot do anything about this," you reinforce helplessness. Every time you say, "This is not my fault," you might be right, but you give away leverage. Leverage does not come from fairness. Leverage comes from ownership. That is the key. Strong people do not ask, "Who is to blame?" They ask, "What is in my control?" And they focus there. Agency lives in that question. You have a choice. You can spend energy explaining why things are unfair, or you can spend energy deciding your next move. Only one builds strength. It is not about control. It is about influence. Say it clearly. It is not about control. It is about influence. Influence over your time. Influence over your behavior. Influence over your response. Even in unfair situations. Especially in unfair situations. Agency does not mean pretending everything is okay. It means refusing to become passive when things are not okay. Passivity is learned helplessness. Agency is learned strength. You build it one decision at a time. Here is how agency disappears. You delay decisions. You wait for consensus. You avoid ownership. And slowly, you stop trusting yourself. Because self-trust is built through decision-making. No decisions, no trust. That is the cost. You have a choice. You can stay stuck waiting for clarity, or you can decide and let clarity follow. Clarity follows commitment. Say it again. Clarity follows commitment. Agency begins when you stop asking, "What should I do?" and start asking, "What will I do?" That shift is subtle, but it changes everything. One is passive, one is active. Active language creates active behavior. You do not need their permission to take responsibility for your life. You do not need validation to decide how you respond. You do not need approval to choose discipline over excuses. Excuses feel justified. Discipline feels uncomfortable. But discipline builds agency. Say it clearly. It is not about fairness. It is about discipline. Discipline to respond instead of react. Discipline to decide instead of delay. Discipline to own instead of blame. That is the work. Here is a real example. Two professionals face the same setback. One says, "This ruined my chances." The other says, "This changed my approach." Same situation, different agency. One collapses, one adapts. Adaptation is agency in motion. Agency does not eliminate problems. Agency keeps you from being controlled by them. That is big trust. Big trust means trusting yourself to respond effectively, even when things go wrong. Not trusting the outcome, trusting your response. That is a powerful distinction. You do not control everything, but you control your response. One more time. You do not control everything, but you control your response. Let that sink in. Right now, there is something you are blaming. A person, a system, a situation. Blame feels justified, but it is costing you power. Ask yourself this. What part of this is mine to own? Not to shame yourself, not to judge yourself, to empower yourself. Ownership is leverage. Leverage creates options. Options create movement. That is the chain. Here is what you must stop doing. Stop saying, "I had no choice." That sentence removes agency. Instead, say this, "I chose based on what I knew." That keeps agency intact. Stop saying, "They made me feel this way." Instead, say, "I am responsible for my response." That restores power. Stop waiting for external change to begin internal discipline. Internal discipline comes first. That is the key. Agency is built through small, daily decisions. Wake up when you say you will. Follow through when it is uncomfortable. Act when excuses are available. Each time you do that, you reinforce a powerful belief. I can rely on myself. That belief changes how you show up. You stop negotiating with resistance. You stop outsourcing responsibility. You become consistent. Consistency builds identity. Identity builds confidence. That is big trust. Big trust is not loud. It is quiet certainty. It is the calm belief that no matter what happens, you will respond with discipline. That belief is earned through decisions. You have a choice. You can live reactively, or you can live deliberately. Deliberate living requires agency. Agency requires decisions. Decisions require courage. Courage grows through repetition, not through motivation. That is the discipline. It is not about motivation. It is about discipline. Say it again. It is not about motivation. It is about discipline. Motivation comes and goes. Agency stays when discipline is present. You do not need their permission to choose discipline. You do not need ideal conditions to act with agency. You need a decision. Make one. Today, decide how you will respond to something you have been avoiding. Not perfectly, not fearlessly, responsibly. That decision strengthens big trust, because big trust is built when you stop waiting for control and start exercising agency. You do not control everything, but you control your response. And that is enough. That is power. That is agency. That is the lesson of this chapter. And now we move forward, because once you reclaim agency, you must learn how to protect it. You must stop giving your power away to people-pleasing, perfectionism, and external validation. In the next chapter, you will learn why giving your power away feels polite but costs you everything. That is where we go next. Chapter 6. Stop giving your power away. Listen closely. This chapter is about power. Your power. You did not lose it. It was given away. Quietly. Repeatedly. One yes at a time. People-pleasing is not kindness. People-pleasing is outsourced self-worth. That is the truth. Perfectionism is not high standards. Perfectionism is fear wearing ambition. That is the truth. You have a choice. You always have a choice. Every time you silence yourself, you give power away. Every time you agree, while your body says no, you give power away. Every time you wait for approval, you give power away. Approval is rented. Self-trust is owned. That is the key. Most people do not fail from lack of talent. They fail from chronic self-abandonment. They fail from saying yes when they mean no. They fail from living for reactions instead of principles. You do not need their permission. You never did. Let us be direct. If you are exhausted, it is not because you are weak. It is because you are overextended. It is because you are leaking energy everywhere. Burnout is not a time management issue. Burnout is a boundary issue. That is the key. Think about this. Every unwanted obligation costs confidence. Every forced smile costs clarity. Every ignored instinct costs self-trust. And you pay that cost daily. You have a choice. People-pleasing teaches your nervous system a dangerous lesson. It teaches that safety comes from approval. It teaches that love is conditional. It teaches that your needs come last. That lesson is false, and it is expensive. You do not become confident by being liked. You become confident by being aligned. That is the key. Perfectionism works the same way. It pretends to protect you. It promises safety through flawlessness, but it never delivers. Perfectionism delays action. Perfectionism kills momentum. Perfectionism feeds self-doubt. It is not about excellence. It is about control. It is not about growth. It is about fear. That is the key. You wait. You polish. You adjust. You hesitate. And opportunities pass. Thinking becomes hiding. Preparation becomes avoidance. And fear feels intelligent. You have a choice. Let us reframe this. Saying no is not rejection. Saying no is direction. Boundaries are not walls. Boundaries are instructions. They teach others how to treat you. If you do not set them, someone else will, and they will not choose in your favor. You do not need their permission. Power returns the moment you choose honesty, not loud honesty, quiet honesty, internal honesty. Ask yourself this: did I say yes out of alignment or out of fear? Did I agree to be liked or to be true? That question changes everything. You have a choice. Here is the discipline. Pause before responding. Breathe once. Check your body. If your chest tightens, pay attention. If your energy drops, pay attention. If your voice wants to disappear, pay attention. Your body knows before your mind explains. That is the key. Stop explaining your boundaries. Explanations invite negotiation. Boundaries require clarity. A simple no is complete. A calm no is powerful. A respectful no is enough. You do not need their permission. Now, let us talk about guilt. Guilt will show up. It always does. Guilt is the withdrawal symptom of people-pleasing. Do not confuse discomfort with danger. You are not wrong for choosing yourself. You are correcting a pattern. That takes courage. You have a choice. Every time you honor your word to yourself, trust grows. Every time you act without approval, confidence grows. Every time you choose alignment, power returns. That is how agency is built. It is not about being liked. It is about being solid. It is not about perfection. It is about integrity. That is the key. Let us be practical now. Here are behaviors to stop. Stop over-explaining. Stop apologizing for existing. Stop volunteering when resentment is guaranteed. Stop chasing validation from people who benefit from your silence. Here is what to start. Start answering slowly. Start choosing rest without justification. Start telling the truth in small moments. Start leaving conversations that drain you. These are not small changes. They are identity shifts. You are teaching yourself a new role, the role of self-advocate. You have a choice. Understand this. People may resist the new you. That is normal. The version of you with boundaries changes the system. And systems resist change. Do not retreat. Do not explain. Do not negotiate with guilt. Stay steady. Approval is rented. Self-trust is owned. That is the key. Power is not loud. Power is consistent. Power is calm. It is the ability to choose yourself without needing applause. That is real confidence. As this chapter closes, remember this. Every time you stop giving your power away, you reclaim your future. Every boundary reinforces identity. Every aligned decision compounds trust. You are not here to manage reactions. You are here to live in truth. And in the next chapter, we will build on this foundation by learning how self-trust is strengthened through decisive action, not endless preparation. Chapter 7. Autonomy is the root of confidence. Listen carefully. Confidence is not something you wait for. Confidence is something you practice, and it starts with autonomy. Autonomy means you choose, not react, not comply, not perform. You decide. Most people want confidence, but avoid autonomy. They want certainty without responsibility. They want approval without alignment. That never works. Confidence grows when your actions align with your values, not expectations. That is the truth. Every aligned decision strengthens self-trust. That is the key. You have a choice. Right now, your confidence reflects your patterns, not your potential, not your intelligence, your patterns. If you constantly betray your values, confidence collapses. If you consistently honor your values, confidence compounds. It is that simple. Autonomy is not rebellion. Autonomy is self-leadership. It means you decide who you are before the world tells you. It means you act from principles, not pressure. You do not need their permission. Let us be clear. Confidence is not loud. Confidence is not dominant. Confidence is congruent. When your words match your actions, trust grows. When your actions match your values, belief stabilizes. That is the key. Think about the moments you feel strongest. They are not moments of praise. They are moments of integrity. Moments when you chose truth over comfort. Moments when you chose long-term respect over short-term validation. Every aligned decision strengthens self-trust. You have a choice. Most self-doubt comes from one source: internal inconsistency. You say one thing, you do another, and your mind notices. Self-doubt is the consequence, not the cause. It is not about confidence. It is about coherence. That is the key. When you act against your values, your nervous system loses trust. When you act in alignment, safety returns. Confidence is a byproduct of self-respect. Autonomy builds that respect. Let us talk about expectations. Expectations are invisible contracts. Contracts you never agreed to. Family expectations. Cultural expectations. Social expectations. They tell you who to be, how to act, what success should look like. If you follow them blindly, you lose yourself quietly. You have a choice. Autonomy asks a better question. What do I value? What matters to me? What standard do I choose? Until you answer that, confidence will feel fragile. Borrowed values create borrowed confidence. Own values create unshakable confidence. That is the key. Let us make this practical. Here is how autonomy is built. First, define your non-negotiables. What will you no longer tolerate? What will you no longer compromise? These are not goals. These are standards. Standards remove confusion. Second, slow your decisions. Fast decisions often serve pressure. Slow decisions serve values. Pause. Ask yourself, does this align with who I am becoming? Every aligned decision strengthens self-trust. You have a choice. Third, accept the cost. Autonomy has a price. You may disappoint people. You may be misunderstood. You may stand alone sometimes. That is normal. Integrity often feels lonely at first, but it builds inner stability. Short-term validation feels good. Long-term integrity feels powerful. That is the key. Let us talk about fear. Fear will show up when you choose autonomy. Fear is not a stop sign. Fear is a signal of growth. Do not wait for fear to disappear. Act with fear present. Confidence follows action, not the other way around. You do not need their permission. Every time you choose alignment, even quietly, something shifts. Your posture changes. Your voice steadies. Your energy becomes grounded. People notice. But more importantly, you notice. You start trusting yourself. You have a choice. Now listen closely. Autonomy is built in small moments, not dramatic declarations. Choosing rest instead of proving. Choosing honesty instead of image. Choosing consistency instead of intensity. These choices compound. Every aligned decision strengthens self-trust. This is how confidence becomes durable, not situational, not dependent on praise, not shaken by criticism. It becomes internal. That is the key. Here are behaviors to stop. Stop saying yes when it violates your values. Stop chasing outcomes that contradict who you are. Stop explaining your choices to people committed to misunderstanding you. Here is what to start. Start choosing what feels clean inside. Start honoring small promises to yourself. Start acting like your word matters, because it does. You have a choice. Remember this. Confidence is not built by thinking better thoughts. Confidence is built by making better decisions. Aligned decisions, repeated decisions, unapologetic decisions. That is autonomy. As this chapter ends, understand this truth. When you live in alignment, doubt loses its grip. When you choose integrity, confidence becomes inevitable. In the next chapter, we will take this foundation further and explore how disciplined action, not motivation, turns self-trust into momentum. Chapter 8. Silence the comparison loop. Listen carefully. Comparison is dangerous. It is invisible and it is lethal. It destroys clarity. It turns your path into someone else's race. It steals momentum. It undermines confidence. Comparison is the fastest way to abandon yourself. Say it again. Comparison is the fastest way to abandon yourself. You have a choice. You always have a choice. Every time you look at someone else and measure yourself, you give your power away. Every time you scroll and doubt your progress, you give your power away. Every time you mimic instead of act, you give your power away. That is the truth. Comparison is disguised as inspiration. It pretends to motivate. It feels productive, but it is not. Comparison is a trap. It convinces you that someone else defines your standards. It convinces you that approval validates worth. It is a lie. You do not need their permission. You do not need validation. You do not need recognition. You only need yourself. Listen closely. Social media is a magnifier. It amplifies the voices of others while muting your own. It creates a world where performance equals value. And you compare. You scroll. You doubt. It feels normal. It feels harmless. It is neither. Comparison costs clarity. When you measure yourself against others, you lose sight of your path. You lose focus on your goals. You forget your standards, and your decisions weaken. You have a choice. Silence the comparison loop. Shut it down. Do not engage. The first step is awareness. Notice when you compare. Notice the triggers. Notice the patterns. Every time your mind says, "They are further than me. They are better than me. They are luckier than me." Stop. Say it out loud. Comparison is a trap. It does not define me. I do not need their approval. That repetition rewires the nervous system. That repetition rebuilds trust. That repetition restores agency. You have a choice. Next, focus on your standards. Your path is yours. Your speed is yours. Your success is yours. Do not outsource your definition of progress. Do not borrow someone else's metrics. Do not measure your worth in their terms. That is the key. Comparison also feeds fear. Fear of inadequacy. Fear of rejection. Fear of failure. When you compare, you assume their strengths negate yours. You assume their achievements diminish your potential. That is false. Completely false. You have a choice. Your value is not relative. Your path is unique. Your timeline is personal. Every comparison is a vote of self-abandonment. Every act of focus on yourself is a vote of self-ownership. You have a choice. Let us address imposter syndrome. High achievers are especially vulnerable. They compare constantly. They feel they are always behind. They feel fraudulent. They feel undeserving. Even with evidence of success, the loop persists. That is because comparison is emotional, not rational. It hijacks perception. It distorts reality. The antidote is autonomy. Autonomy requires you to define your own metrics. Autonomy requires you to acknowledge your progress in real terms. Autonomy requires you to measure growth against yourself, not them. Every aligned decision strengthens self-trust. Say it again. Every aligned decision strengthens self-trust. Now, let us be practical. Step 1. Stop scrolling endlessly without purpose. Social media is designed to trigger comparison. Limit exposure. Pause. Notice how you feel after scrolling. Step 2. Celebrate your wins. Do not wait for applause. Do not wait for likes. Acknowledge privately your progress. Document it. Journal it. Mark it visibly. Step 3. Reframe perception. When you feel envy, ask yourself, what can I learn from this without comparing? What steps can I take aligned with my values? Shift focus from them to yourself. That is where growth resides. Comparison also feeds perfectionism. When you see someone else excelling, your inner critic intensifies. It says, you are not enough. You must be perfect or fail. That is a lie. Perfection is an illusion. Alignment, action, and consistency are real. You have a choice. Do not let the world dictate your standards. Do not let images, posts, or achievements define your worth. Do not let your ego measure success externally. That is the key. Comparison triggers procrastination too. You wait to act until you feel equal or superior. You delay projects because someone else seems further. You avoid challenges because their performance intimidates you. That is weakness disguised as prudence. The strong act anyway. They act with imperfection. They act with courage. They act with discipline. Discipline compounds. Action compounds. Self-trust compounds. Every time you act aligned with your path, without comparison, confidence grows. Every time you refuse the loop, autonomy strengthens. You have a choice. Let us talk about internal dialogue. Your mind will attempt to compare automatically. It will generate scenarios, judgments, and, if only statements. Do not engage. Observe. Acknowledge. Return to your path. Comparison is a voice, not a reality. You decide if it gets airtime. Every decision to ignore comparison is a vote of ownership. Every vote strengthens big trust. Every vote reinforces self-reliance. You have a choice. Comparison also distracts from learning. When you focus on them, you imitate, you copy, you mimic. That may feel productive. It is not. Real learning requires curiosity, not competition. Real growth requires observation, not judgment. Real mastery comes from practice, not envy. Every aligned decision strengthens self-trust. You have a choice. Now, let us address identity. When you compare, you adopt external definitions of success. You dilute your identity. You fragment your focus. Confidence requires coherence. Autonomy requires alignment. Silencing comparison restores both. That is the key. Here is a simple daily practice. Step 1. List 3 achievements privately that you accomplished this week. Step 2. Identify one action you took that aligned with your values. Step 3. Reflect and repeat. Do not measure it against others. Do not announce it for approval. Do not seek validation. That is how autonomy compounds. Silence the comparison loop. Refuse to participate. You will feel discomfort. That is normal. That discomfort signals growth. You have a choice. When the loop appears, say aloud, "This is comparison. It does not define me. I define myself." Repeat it, anchor it, reinforce it. Every time you do this, clarity returns. Every time clarity returns, self-trust strengthens. Every time self-trust strengthens, confidence grows. That is big trust. Now, let us talk about long-term alignment. Every aligned choice that ignores comparison compounds into a confident identity. Every time you prioritize integrity over approval, momentum grows. Every time you honor your own standards, your nervous system stabilizes. That is how excellence is built. Not through imitation, not through envy, through aligned action. You have a choice. Do not measure. Do not compare. Do not judge. Do not mimic. Decide. Act. Align. Every aligned decision strengthens self-trust. That is the key. As this chapter closes, remember this: comparison will always exist. It is amplified in every social feed, every conversation, and every achievement you witness. Do not fight it. Do not debate it. Do not allow it to define you. Silence it. Observe it. Return to yourself. Every choice you make, aligned with your values, strengthens confidence. Every choice you make, without comparison, restores power. Every choice you make, grounded in autonomy, builds big trust. And in the next chapter, we will explore how emotional clarity, when combined with aligned action, accelerates self-trust and closes the loop on self-doubt forever. Chapter 9. Imposter syndrome is a signal, not a stop sign. Listen carefully. Imposter syndrome is not a weakness. It is not evidence that you are failing. It is not a permanent state. It is a signal that you are moving beyond comfort, a signal that you are stepping into growth. Growth feels unfamiliar before it feels normal. Say it again. Growth feels unfamiliar before it feels normal. You have a choice. You can freeze. You can retreat. Or you can recognize the signal and move forward. That is the key. Most high achievers experience imposter syndrome. Top performers, leaders, entrepreneurs, professionals who are doing more than they ever have before. They doubt. They hesitate. They ask, "Am I good enough?" They worry, "Will they find out?" That is normal. That is expected. That is part of expansion. Listen closely. Imposter feelings are not evidence of inadequacy. They are evidence of unfamiliar territory. Your mind resists what it does not yet understand. Your nervous system confuses progress with danger. You have a choice. Do not interpret fear as incapacity. Do not interpret hesitation as failure. Do not interpret doubt as truth. They are signals. Signals to pay attention. Signals to act deliberately. Signals to refine your approach. Every time you interpret imposter syndrome correctly, self-trust strengthens. Every time you act despite the feeling, confidence grows. Every time you honor the discomfort, you reclaim power. That is the key. Let us be practical. First, recognize it. Name it. Say, "This is imposter syndrome. It means I am growing." Do not deny it. Do not ignore it. Acknowledgement is the first step toward mastery. Second, identify the unfamiliar territory. Where are you stretching? What task challenges you in new ways? Which responsibility feels bigger than your previous experience? Imposter feelings often appear right before breakthroughs, right before you cross a threshold, right before you demonstrate capacity you did not know you had. You have a choice. Third, act anyway. Do not wait for permission. Do not wait for certainty. Do not wait for confidence to appear fully formed. Confidence is built in action, not before action, not by wishing, not by avoiding discomfort. Say it again. Confidence is built in action. You do not need their permission. You do not need external validation. You do not need a guarantee. You need decision and courage and consistent action. Most people retreat when they feel imposter syndrome. They wait, they delay, they rehearse, they over-prepare. And while they wait, momentum is lost. Trust in themselves erodes. Self-doubt deepens. Do not do that. That is the trap. Instead, act. Act aligned with your values. Act aligned with your goals. Act aligned with your principles. Every act builds self-trust. Every act quiets doubt. Every act rewires fear. That is the key. Imposter syndrome also thrives on comparison. You look at others and assume they are more capable. You assume their path is easier. You assume they are confident all the time. That is false. Everyone struggles in new territory. Everyone feels doubt before growth. Everyone experiences the discomfort of expansion. You have a choice. Silence the comparison loop. Anchor yourself in your own path. Anchor yourself in your own progress. Anchor yourself in the evidence of what you have accomplished. Growth feels unfamiliar before it feels normal. Every time you act aligned, despite discomfort, you make the unfamiliar familiar. Every time you act aligned, despite fear, self-trust grows. Every time you act aligned, despite doubt, confidence compounds. That is the key. Let us talk about internal dialogue. Your mind will generate narratives like, they will discover, I am not qualified. I am not ready for this responsibility. Soon, someone will see I am faking it. Do not believe those stories. They are lies your mind tells to keep you in safety. They are fear dressed as logic. Instead, replace the narrative. Say, I feel unfamiliar because I am growing. That is a sign of progress. I will act anyway. Repeat it, anchor it, reinforce it. Every time you do, nervous system recalibrates. Every time you do, confidence stabilizes. Every time you do, big trust grows. You have a choice. Now, let us discuss preparation. Preparation can be a tool, or It can be a trap. Some overprepare to avoid action. Some overprepare to avoid feeling like an imposter. Excess preparation feels productive. It feels safe. It feels reasonable. It is neither. Act with purpose. Act aligned. Act consistently. Then refine as you go. This is how leaders expand. This is how entrepreneurs succeed. This is how professionals break through ceilings. They do not wait for confidence to arrive. They create confidence through repeated action. Growth feels unfamiliar before it feels normal. You have a choice. Let us address identity. Imposter syndrome questions your competence. It challenges your identity. It feels like a threat to who you are. Do not surrender. Do not shrink. Do not question your worth. Your worth is inherent. Your capability is being built. Your potential is unfolding. Every act of alignment, despite doubt, solidifies identity. Every decision taken in courage, despite fear, reinforces self-trust. Every choice to act, despite the discomfort, grows big trust. That is the key. Here is a practical daily exercise. Step 1. Identify one area where you feel imposter feelings. Step 2. Take one action today aligned with your goal despite the feeling. Step 3. Record it. Reflect. Reinforce. That small, deliberate action compounds over time. It builds a nervous system that trusts itself. It trains your mind to recognize signals as opportunities, not stop signs. You have a choice. Remember this. Imposter syndrome is temporary. Discomfort is temporary. Growth is not optional. Every time you respond, instead of retreating, you reinforce self-trust. Every time you act, despite doubt, you strengthen agency. Every time you act, aligned with values, you build big trust. That is the key. Leaders who master imposter syndrome act first. They feel the fear. They name it. They move anyway. They take action, aligned with values before comfort appears. That is how momentum is built. That is how clarity grows. That is how self-trust compounds. You have a choice. Now, do not mistake comfort for safety. The familiar feels safe. The known feels safe. But safety is not the point. Expansion is. Your nervous system resists unfamiliarity. Your mind resists uncertainty. That is natural. It is not failure. Act anyway. That is courage. That is discipline. That is big trust. Growth feels unfamiliar before it feels normal. Say it again. Growth feels unfamiliar before it feels normal. Anchor it. Repeat it. Live it. Every time you act, despite imposter feelings, confidence becomes internal, not conditional. Every time you act, despite doubt, self-trust is strengthened. Every time you act, despite fear, momentum compounds. That is the key. As this chapter closes, remember this. Imposter syndrome is not a stop sign. It is a signal that you are expanding, a signal that you are stepping into growth, a signal that big trust is developing inside of you. And in the next chapter, we will explore how focused emotional clarity combined with intentional action cements self-trust and transforms hesitation into unstoppable momentum. Chapter 10. Adaptability is the ultimate advantage. Listen carefully. Confidence is not rigidity. It is not stubbornness. It is not blind persistence. Confidence is flexibility. Confidence is awareness. Confidence is the ability to adjust when conditions change. Trust does not mean certainty. Trust does not mean control. Trust does not mean perfection. Trust means flexibility. Say it again. Trust does not mean certainty. It means flexibility. You have a choice. You can resist change. You can cling to what is familiar, or you can adapt and thrive. That is the key. Most people mistake confidence for rigidity. They believe being strong means never changing. They think consistency is consistency of methods rather than alignment. They confuse stubbornness with leadership. That is false. Rigidity kills growth. Rigidity destroys momentum. Rigidity erodes trust in yourself. You have a choice. Let us define adaptability. Adaptability is not compromise. It is not weakness. It is not indecision. Adaptability is awareness coupled with deliberate action. It is responding intelligently to new information. It is pivoting without losing your standards. It is maintaining integrity while adjusting approach. That is the key. Think about careers that fail despite talent. The individuals are capable, intelligent, even driven. They collapse when conditions change. They refuse to pivot. They refuse to learn. They refuse to adjust. Opportunity passes. Momentum stalls. Trust erodes. Adaptable individuals thrive. They observe. They analyze. They adjust. They act again. Trust does not mean certainty. It means flexibility. You have a choice. Now, let us discuss the internal mindset. When change occurs, your mind will generate fear. It will say, I do not know what to do. I am unprepared. I cannot succeed here. That is normal. It is expected. It is part of being alive. Do not interpret fear as a stop sign. Do not let uncertainty immobilize you. Do not let change diminish your confidence. Instead, interpret fear as information. Interpret hesitation as a signal. Interpret disruption as an opportunity to exercise self-trust. Every time you adjust, confidence grows. Every time you respond with intention, trust strengthens. Every time you adapt without abandoning values, power returns. That is the key. Let us be practical. Step 1. Observe reality. Do not react emotionally. Do not judge immediately. Notice the facts. Notice the changes. Notice the gaps between expectation and reality. Step 2. Reframe your options. List possible responses. Evaluate consequences based on principles, not panic. Choose aligned action. Step 3. Execute decisively. Act with integrity. Act with courage. Act with curiosity. Momentum compounds through disciplined adaptability. Momentum compounds through deliberate action. Momentum compounds through flexibility anchored in values. You have a choice. Now, let us examine rigidity in real life. Consider leaders who insist on a failing strategy. They resist feedback. They refuse to pivot. They believe consistency is staying the same. They are rewarded with lost opportunities. They are punished with stagnation. Conversely, adaptable leaders recognize signals. They listen. They observe. They iterate. They adjust strategy without compromising standards. Trust grows. Confidence solidifies. Results improve. That is the key. Adaptability also applies to emotional regulation. Life throws unexpected challenges. People behave unpredictably. Circumstances shift without warning. Rigid individuals crumble. They react impulsively. They overcorrect. They burn bridges. Adaptable individuals pause. They assess impact. They choose response. They act intentionally. You have a choice. Now, think about your personal growth, your career, your relationships, your goals. Everything requires adjustment at some point. Everything demands flexibility. Everything rewards the person willing to pivot without panic. Trust does not mean certainty. It means flexibility. Repetition anchors learning. Say it again. Trust does not mean certainty. It means flexibility. Now, let us address self-trust. Rigid people believe that trust requires predicting outcomes. They assume they must have all answers. They feel they must control the uncontrollable. That is false. Trust is not prediction. Trust is consistent action, aligned with principles. Trust is observing reality, adjusting, and acting. Every act of adaptability reinforces self-trust. Every choice to adjust intelligently strengthens confidence. Every pivot executed with integrity builds big trust. That is the key. Here is a practical exercise for developing adaptability. Step 1. Identify one area in your life where you are resisting change. Step 2. Ask, what is flexible here without violating my standards? Step 3. Choose one small action to adjust today. Step 4. Reflect on the result and iterate. Small adjustments compound into massive resilience. Small choices reinforce self-trust. Small actions cultivate flexibility as a default state. You have a choice. Let us also address the ego. Your ego hates adaptability. It wants consistency in form, even if substance suffers. It fears uncertainty. It clings to what is known, rather than what works. Discipline overcomes ego. Flexibility, guided by principles, silences fear. Action overrides hesitation. You have a choice. Here is another critical insight. Adaptability does not mean compromise on identity. It does not mean abandoning standards. It does not mean being passive or reactive. It means strategic adjustment. It means intentional redirection. It means aligning methods with reality while maintaining values. Every decision to adapt intelligently builds self-trust. Every decision to adjust while aligned with standards strengthens big trust. Every decision to act flexibly compounds momentum. That is the key. Now, let us consider failure. Rigid people fear failure. They avoid risk. They freeze when results are uncertain. Adaptable people use failure as feedback. They adjust approach. They pivot strategy. They take new action. Failure becomes information. Failure becomes momentum. Failure becomes trust building. You have a choice. Next, consider long-term strategy. Life is unpredictable. Markets shift. People change. Goals evolve. The rigid will crumble. The adaptable will thrive. Adaptability is the ultimate advantage. It allows you to navigate uncertainty with poise. It allows you to maintain self-trust under pressure. It allows you to achieve results without losing integrity. That is the key. Let us apply this to emotional clarity. Your emotions are signals. Fear is a signal. Frustration is a signal. Disappointment is a signal. Do not suppress them. Do not deny them. Do not react impulsively. Observe. Interpret. Act. Every response executed with clarity builds confidence. Every pivot executed with intention strengthens big trust. Every decision taken aligned with values reinforces momentum. You have a choice. Finally, integrate adaptability into daily life. 1. Notice when plans fail. 2. Pause before reacting. 3. Ask, how can I adjust while staying aligned? 4. Execute action immediately. 5. Reflect, iterate, and repeat. Consistency of action, not rigidity, builds mastery. Flexibility of method, not ego, builds results. Adaptability anchored in principles builds trust, confidence, and momentum. Say it again. Trust does not mean certainty. It means flexibility. Anchor it, repeat it, live it. As this chapter closes, remember this: rigid confidence breaks when circumstances change. Adaptable confidence thrives in any environment. Every decision to adjust intelligently strengthens self-trust. Every pivot executed with integrity reinforces big trust. Every act of flexibility, aligned with principles, compounds momentum. And in the next chapter, we will explore how sustaining momentum through disciplined routines, aligned habits, and consistent action transforms temporary confidence into unshakable, lifelong self-trust. Chapter 11. Emotion is data, not danger. Listen carefully. Emotions are not enemies. They are not flaws. They are not signs that you are weak. Emotions are data. They are signals. They point to values, boundaries, and unmet needs. Listen to emotion. Do not let it drive. Say it again. Listen to emotion. Do not let it drive. You have a choice. You can ignore emotion. You can suppress it, or you can interpret it and act with clarity. That is the key. Most people misunderstand emotion. They treat it as danger. They react impulsively. They make decisions from fear, anger, or frustration. That is a trap. When you react without interpreting the data, emotion controls you. It drives decisions. It erodes self-trust. It destroys momentum. You have a choice. Listen carefully. Anxiety is not a signal that you are incapable. Anger is not proof that you are failing. Disappointment is not evidence that you should quit. They are signals. They indicate something important. They highlight areas that need attention. They guide your focus. Listen to emotion. Do not let it drive. Example: anxiety before a presentation is not a stop sign. It is a signal that preparation is needed. It is a signal to rehearse. It is a signal to clarify priorities. Many high performers freeze under anxiety. They interpret it as danger. They procrastinate. They delay action. That is not productive. That is not growth. That is not trust. Instead, acknowledge emotion. Name it. Say, I feel anxiety. It is data, not danger. Every time you name emotion, you reclaim control. Every time you interpret data, you act with intention. Every time you act with clarity, self-trust strengthens. You have a choice. Let us discuss anger. Anger is not a flaw. It is a signal. It often indicates boundaries are being crossed. It highlights unmet needs. It signals that alignment is compromised. Most people react to anger by lashing out. They say things they regret. They damage relationships. They undermine their own integrity. That is weakness disguised as expression. Instead, pause. Observe. Interpret the message. Ask, what is this anger telling me about my values, needs, or boundaries? Then act intentionally. Every decision to act with clarity strengthens self-trust. Every choice to respond rather than react compounds confidence. Every moment you respect the signal of emotion reinforces big trust. That is the key. Now, let us discuss frustration. Frustration occurs when expectations and reality collide. It points to inefficiencies, misalignments, and areas requiring attention. Do not suppress frustration. Do not deny it. Do not allow it to control decisions. Instead, observe. Analyze the cause. Adjust your actions accordingly. Every moment frustration is processed intentionally builds self-awareness. Every time you act with clarity despite frustration, confidence compounds. Every disciplined response strengthens big trust. You have a choice. Listen carefully. Emotions can also signal opportunity. Excitement is data. Passion is data. Curiosity is data. Acting on these signals with discipline accelerates growth. Ignoring these signals or letting them run unchecked undermines potential. Listen to emotion. Do not let it drive. Let us be practical. Step 1. Name your emotion. Say it aloud or write it down. I feel anxiety. I feel frustration. I feel excitement. Step 2. Interpret the data. Ask, what does this emotion indicate about my values, boundaries, or needs? Ask, where does alignment exist and where does it need adjustment? Step 3. Decide your action. Do not react impulsively. Do not suppress or ignore. Act with clarity based on interpretation. Step 4. Reflect. Analyze the results of your action. Adjust your approach next time. This creates a feedback loop. Emotion provides data. You interpret the data. You act deliberately. Momentum builds. Self-trust grows. That is the key. Now, consider anxiety in high-stakes situations. Many professionals freeze. They overthink. They procrastinate. They wait for clarity that never arrives. That is failure disguised as caution. Instead, transform anxiety into preparation. Break the task into actionable steps. Focus on what you can control. Execute deliberately. Every small step taken despite anxiety builds confidence. Every step reinforces self-trust. Every step compounds momentum. You have a choice. Next, consider emotional triggers in relationships. Disagreements often trigger anger, frustration, or fear. Most people react automatically. They speak impulsively. They escalate conflict. They damage trust. That is weakness disguised as honesty. Instead, pause. Identify the emotion. Ask, what boundary or value is this revealing? Respond intentionally, not impulsively. Every disciplined response strengthens relationships. Every controlled action reinforces self-trust. Every act of clarity compounds big trust. That is the key. Now, let us address habitual emotional responses. Many people act from conditioned patterns. Fear triggers avoidance. Anger triggers argument. Sadness triggers withdrawal. That is not choice. That is reaction. Choice is available. Every time you interpret emotion rather than react, you reclaim power. Every time you act intentionally, despite impulse, self-trust grows. Every repeated act rewires the nervous system for mastery. Listen to emotion. Do not let it drive. Let us discuss emotional clarity. Clarity comes from naming, observing, interpreting, and acting. Clarity compounds with repetition. Clarity builds confidence. Clarity reinforces big trust. When emotions are understood as data, not danger, hesitation disappears. When fear is interpreted as signal, not stop sign, action occurs. When anger is used to reinforce boundaries, power returns. When excitement guides deliberate steps, momentum accelerates. You have a choice. Now, consider mistakes. Mistakes often trigger shame, regret, or guilt. Most people suppress or deny these feelings. They interpret them as failure. That is distortion. Instead, observe. Analyze the feedback from the mistake. Adjust approach accordingly. Act deliberately next time. Every disciplined response to mistake reinforces self-trust. Every corrective action strengthens big trust. Every learned lesson compounds momentum. You have a choice. Let us summarize. Emotion is never the enemy. Emotion is never a stop sign. Emotion is never proof of inadequacy. Emotion is data. It signals values. It highlights boundaries. It reveals unmet needs. It guides alignment. Listen to emotion. Do not let it drive. Now, practical daily application. Each morning, identify one emotion you feel. Ask, what data does this provide? Determine an aligned action based on interpretation. Execute intentionally. Reflect nightly and reinforce learning. This builds emotional intelligence. This builds self-trust. This builds big trust. You have a choice. Finally, anchor this principle in life. Every decision taken with clarity, despite emotion, strengthens confidence. Every moment where emotion is interpreted rather than reacted to reinforces self-trust. Every repeated act compounds momentum. Listen to emotion. Do not let it drive. As this chapter closes, remember this. Emotion is not danger. Emotion is data. Every signal is an opportunity to act deliberately. Every interpretation strengthens big trust. Every aligned response compounds momentum. And in the next chapter, we will explore how the final piece of self-trust, the 4A's framework integration, turns knowledge, action, and clarity into unstoppable, lifelong confidence and achievement. Chapter 12. Stretch the edge of your comfort zone. Listen carefully. Confidence is built in motion. It is not built in meditation. It is not built in waiting. It is not built in overthinking. Confidence is built in motion. Say it again. Confidence is built in motion, not meditation. You have a choice. You can remain safe. You can stay comfortable. Or you can stretch the edge of your comfort zone and grow. That is the key. Most people overestimate risk and underestimate their capability. They see discomfort and assume failure. They see challenge and assume danger. They freeze. They wait for certainty that will never arrive. That is hesitation disguised as intelligence. That is self-doubt masquerading as caution. You have a choice. Let us define the edge of your comfort zone. It is the space where action feels slightly uncomfortable. It is the space where fear whispers, "Do not try." It is the space where courage is optional, but transformation is inevitable. Every act you take in this space rewires fear into evidence of capability. Every small risk proves to your nervous system that you are capable. Every courageous step strengthens self-trust. That is the key. Now, let us talk about micro-risks. Micro-risks are small, deliberate actions outside your familiar routines. They might be speaking up in a meeting. They might be making a call you have been avoiding. They might be sharing your opinion honestly. Most people ignore micro-risks. They dismiss them as insignificant. They underestimate their compounding effect. That is a mistake. Micro-risks accumulate. Micro-risks compound. Micro-risks rewire your nervous system to trust action over hesitation. You have a choice. Let us discuss hesitation. Hesitation feels productive. It feels careful. It feels intelligent. It feels like reflection. That is illusion. Hesitation erodes momentum. Hesitation diminishes clarity. Hesitation amplifies self-doubt. You have a choice. Act deliberately despite hesitation. Act intentionally despite fear. Act consistently despite uncertainty. Every repeated act builds confidence. Every repeated act reinforces self-trust. Every repeated act compounds momentum. That is the key. Now consider fear. Fear is not your enemy. Fear is data. Fear indicates that you are at the edge of growth. Fear signals opportunity. Most people misinterpret fear. They see it as a stop sign. They assume danger. They retreat. That is weakness disguised as caution. Instead, interpret fear as evidence of growth. Take small steps into the edge. Observe results. Iterate. Expand incrementally. Every action transforms fear into proof of capability. Every courageous step rewires the mind to trust itself. Every repeated stretch strengthens big trust. You have a choice. Let us talk about repetition. Confidence is built through repeated exposure to discomfort, not occasional heroics, not dramatic leaps. Consistent, deliberate, small acts are what build resilience. Every day, choose one action that stretches your edge. Every day, take a step you have been avoiding. Every day, act aligned with courage, not comfort. Momentum compounds in small, repeated actions. Trust compounds through discipline. Confidence grows through motion. That is the key. Now, let us examine procrastination. Procrastination masquerades as preparation. It convinces you that waiting is wise. It convinces you that hesitation is safety. That is false. Waiting without action erodes self-trust. Waiting without motion reinforces doubt. Waiting without courage compounds fear. You have a choice. Move now. Act intentionally. Stretch the edge of your comfort zone. Every courageous act, even if small, sends a signal to your nervous system. It says, I am capable. It says, I am trustworthy. It says, I will take action regardless of fear. That is the key. Let us discuss self-awareness. To stretch effectively, you must know where your edge lies. Not too far, not reckless, just beyond familiar. Too far and panic ensues. Too close and growth stalls. You have a choice. Calibrate your risk. Observe your responses. Adjust incrementally. Micro risks allow you to stretch safely. They allow you to test boundaries without catastrophic failure. They allow repeated reinforcement of capability. Every small stretch compounds into greater resilience. Every deliberate act strengthens self-trust. Every courageous step amplifies big trust. That is the key. Now, consider accountability. Share your stretch goals with someone who supports growth, not someone who will validate hesitation, not someone who will reinforce comfort, someone who encourages deliberate action. Accountability accelerates motion. Accountability reinforces courage. Accountability compounds confidence. You have a choice. Next, consider reflection. Every time you stretch, reflect. Ask, what did I learn? Ask, how did I handle discomfort? Ask, what will I do next time? Reflection solidifies lessons. Reflection reinforces capability. Reflection compounds momentum. Every act of courage followed by reflection rewires fear into trust. Every reflection anchors experience into evidence of competence. Every deliberate iteration grows big trust. That is the key. Now, consider cumulative growth. Stretching your edge is not a single event. It is not occasional bravery. It is a lifestyle of small, consistent acts of courage. Each day adds to momentum. Each week strengthens self-trust. Each month compounds confidence. That is how ordinary action creates extraordinary results. That is how self-doubt is transformed into big trust. That is how fear becomes fuel. You have a choice. Let us address internal dialogue. Your mind will say, "This is too hard." It will say, "I cannot do it." It will say, "I am not ready." That is false. That is fear masquerading as reason. Instead, respond, "I feel discomfort because I am growing. I am capable. I will act anyway." Repeat it, anchor it, live it. Every repeated affirmation strengthens self-trust. Every deliberate act compounds momentum. Every courageous stretch builds big trust. That is the key. Now, consider fear of failure. Many people avoid stretching because of fear of mistakes. They assume imperfection is shameful. They interpret risk as danger. That is illusion. Failure is feedback. Mistakes are signals. Discomfort is proof of growth. You have a choice. Act despite fear. Learn from results. Iterate deliberately. Every small risk taken intentionally transforms hesitation into capability. Every courageous act, no matter the outcome, reinforces self-trust. Every stretch strengthens big trust. That is the key. Finally, anchor this principle in life. Identify one area where you feel discomfort. Take one small action today that stretches your edge. Reflect and reinforce learning. Repeat daily, consistently, intentionally. Small, repeated acts of courage create massive transformation. Small, consistent motion builds unshakable confidence. Small, deliberate steps compound into big trust. Confidence is built in motion, not in meditation, not in hesitation, not in waiting. Say it again. Confidence is built in motion, not meditation. You have a choice. Stretch your edge. Act deliberately. Reinforce learning. Compound momentum. Every step you take beyond comfort grows self-trust. Every repeated act strengthens your nervous system to rely on capability, not fear. Every courageous choice rewires hesitation into evidence of strength. That is the key. As this chapter closes, remember this. Self-trust is built in motion. Courage is exercised at the edge of comfort. Discomfort is evidence of growth, not danger. Every small, deliberate risk strengthens big trust. And in the next chapter, we will explore how integrating the 4 A's, acceptance, agency, autonomy, and adaptability, into daily life creates unstoppable, consistent, and lifelong confidence, turning all these lessons into permanent transformation. Chapter 13. Lead yourself before you lead others. Listen carefully. Leadership starts with you, not your title, not your team, not your authority. You cannot lead others effectively if you are not leading yourself. Every choice you make sets the tone for those around you. Every action you take signals what is acceptable and what is not. People feel your certainty before they hear your words. Say it again. People feel your certainty before they hear your words. You have a choice. You can lead from distraction. You can lead from fear. You can lead from doubt, or you can lead from clarity, self-trust, and discipline. That is the key. Most leaders fail, not because they lack knowledge. They fail because they have not mastered self-leadership. They have not mastered the inner game. They have not built big trust in themselves. Self-doubt leaks into every interaction. Hesitation is contagious. Indecision spreads like wildfire. You have a choice. You can stop undermining yourself. You can reclaim your inner authority. You can lead yourself decisively before leading anyone else. Now, let us define self-leadership. Self-leadership is the ability to govern your thoughts, emotions, and actions consistently. Self-leadership is the ability to act aligned with values, even under pressure. Self-leadership is the ability to maintain clarity when chaos surrounds you. That is the key. Consider presence. People notice presence before they notice strategy. They feel confidence before they hear direction. They respond to certainty before they evaluate competence. Most leaders focus on messaging. Most leaders focus on perception. Most leaders focus on appearing right. That is superficial. That is external. That is weak leadership. Instead, focus on internal mastery. Focus on consistent self-trust. Focus on clarity of values. Focus on disciplined action. You have a choice. Now, consider the daily practice of self-leadership. Step 1. Name your priorities. Know what matters most. Know what is non-negotiable. Align every action with those priorities. Step 2. Monitor your internal state. Observe thoughts, emotions, and impulses. Do not suppress discomfort. Do not ignore fear. Interpret signals. Act with intention. Step 3. Execute with integrity. Do not compromise on core principles. Do not yield to distraction. Do not let others' uncertainty sway you. Every repeated act of self-leadership reinforces trust. Every disciplined choice compounds credibility. Every aligned action builds big trust in yourself, which radiates outward. That is the key. Now, consider accountability. Leaders who lead themselves hold themselves accountable first. They measure results, not excuses. They take responsibility, not blame. They act consistently, not sporadically. Most people look externally for validation. They wait for permission. They depend on recognition. They follow rather than lead. You have a choice. Stop outsourcing your authority. Stop waiting for permission. Lead yourself first, and leadership will follow. Now, let us address influence. Influence is not persuasion. Influence is not manipulation. Influence is not charisma. Influence is credibility. Influence is presence. Influence is consistency of action. Influence is clarity of self-trust projected outward. People feel certainty before they hear direction. They notice alignment before they evaluate results. They trust you when you lead yourself with integrity. That is the key. Now, consider challenges. Leaders face unexpected pressures, difficult people, and unpredictable outcomes. The difference between effective and ineffective leadership is internal mastery. The difference is self-leadership. When you lead yourself well, challenges become opportunities. When you lead yourself consistently, pressure becomes clarity. When you lead yourself intentionally, chaos becomes control. You have a choice. Let us examine habits. Daily routines determine your capacity for self-leadership. Disciplined mornings set the tone for the day. Consistent reflection builds clarity. Intentional planning creates momentum. Most leaders are reactive. They wait for emergencies to dictate action. They surrender influence to circumstance. They lead from fatigue and distraction. That is ineffective. That is unsustainable. That is not big trust. Instead, build internal routines. Anchor habits that reinforce self-trust. Prioritize practices that sharpen clarity. Execute daily, without negotiation. Every repeated habit strengthens your leadership from within. Every aligned routine compounds authority. Every consistent action reinforces big trust in yourself, which radiates outward. That is the key. Now, consider decision-making. Leaders who lack self-leadership hesitate. They overthink. They defer. They second-guess. Indecision erodes credibility. Indecision spreads doubt. Indecision invites chaos. Instead, cultivate decisiveness rooted in self-trust. Act intentionally. Act aligned with values. Act consistently. Every decisive action reinforces trust. Every confident choice strengthens influence. Every aligned decision compounds big trust. You have a choice. Now, consider communication. Your words are amplified by your presence. Your influence grows when your actions align with your speech. Your authority is felt before it is heard. Most leaders talk more than they act. They seek to impress. They rely on rhetoric. They attempt to mask insecurity. That is weak leadership. Instead, lead yourself through action. Act aligned with values. Act with integrity. Act with consistency. People will notice. People will follow. People will trust. That is the key. Now, let us discuss growth. Self-leadership is not static. It requires continual development. It demands reflection, correction, and iteration. Most leaders plateau because they stop leading internally. They rely on past success. They rely on titles. They rely on position. You have a choice. Continue growing. Continue stretching. Continue refining self-leadership skills. Every repeated act of self-mastery compounds influence. Every deliberate growth step strengthens big trust. Every consistent iteration builds unstoppable confidence. That is the key. Now, consider authenticity. You cannot inspire others if you are not yourself. You cannot project trust if you are internally fractured. You cannot lead effectively if you hide behind facades. Most leaders imitate others. They adopt strategies that are not aligned with values. They perform rather than lead. That is ineffective. That is superficial. That erodes big trust. Instead, lead authentically. Lead aligned with your principles. Lead with disciplined self-trust. Lead with integrity. Every authentic action reinforces influence. Every aligned choice builds credibility. Every consistent act strengthens big trust in yourself and others. You have a choice. Now, consider stress and adversity. Self-leaders maintain composure under pressure. They act with clarity. They respond intentionally, not reactively. They reinforce standards through action, not rhetoric. Most leaders crumble under pressure. They lash out. They panic. They abdicate authority. That is weakness. That is self-doubt masquerading as leadership. Instead, act intentionally. Anchor in values. Observe, interpret, act. Lead yourself first. Every disciplined response builds confidence. Every intentional act reinforces credibility. Every consistent choice compounds big trust. That is the key. Finally, integrate self-leadership into daily life. Morning. Anchor clarity by reviewing priorities and intentions. Throughout the day, observe thoughts, emotions, and impulses. Execute. Act aligned with values, not distraction or fear. Reflect. Reinforce lessons, identify growth areas, iterate daily. Self-leadership is a practice, not a title. Self-leadership is a discipline, not a skill. Self-leadership is the foundation of big trust. Say it again. People feel your certainty before they hear your words. You have a choice. Lead yourself first. Anchor in integrity. Act intentionally. Build trust. Project influence. Every deliberate choice reinforces internal authority. Every repeated act of self-mastery compounds confidence. Every aligned decision builds unstoppable momentum. That is the key. As this chapter closes, remember this. You cannot inspire if you do not lead yourself. You cannot influence if you are internally fractured. Self-leadership compounds into big trust. Self-leadership transforms doubt into confidence. Self-leadership turns knowledge into action and action into influence. And in the final chapter, we will tie all the lessons together, showing how the 4 A's, courage, emotion, adaptability, and self-leadership converge into lasting, unstoppable, unshakable confidence and lifelong transformation. Chapter 14. Build big trust daily. Listen carefully. Big trust is not a mindset. Big trust is not a theory. Big trust is not something you read about and hope happens. Big trust is a practice, a deliberate, daily, repeated practice. It is reinforced every single day, without exception. Small promises kept build unshakable confidence. Say it again. Small promises kept build unshakable confidence. You have a choice. You can ignore discipline. You can wait for motivation. Or you can act intentionally, consistently, every day to build big trust. That is the key. Most people underestimate the power of daily action. They think that confidence comes from big moments. They think self-trust comes from major wins. They think courage is a rare occurrence. That is false. Confidence compounds in small, repeated acts. Self-trust is earned in daily decisions. Courage grows in incremental action, not occasional heroics. You have a choice. Let us define what it means to build big trust daily. First, make promises to yourself, not vague intentions, not aspirational goals. Concrete, measurable promises that you commit to fulfilling. Second, keep those promises consistently. No excuses, no rationalizations, no waiting for the perfect moment. Action reinforces belief. Action compounds momentum. Third, reflect and adjust. Review your actions honestly. Celebrate successes. Analyze failures without judgment. Iterate deliberately. Every day, reinforce the practice of self-trust. That is the key. Now, consider the small rituals that shape big trust. Wake up with intention. Write down priorities. Set boundaries before the day begins. Move your body to energize clarity. Anchor your focus in action, not distraction. Most people overlook the power of daily ritual. They drift through the day, reacting to stimuli. They let external pressures dictate their energy. They surrender their authority to circumstance. That is weakness. That is self-doubt masquerading as busyness. Instead, build small, consistent rituals that reinforce capability. Every deliberate choice compounds trust. Every repeated act strengthens confidence. Every daily discipline fortifies big trust. You have a choice. Now, consider self-accountability. Big trust requires holding yourself accountable, not through shame, not through guilt, through deliberate, disciplined reflection. Track promises, review results, adjust behavior. Every accountability moment strengthens your internal authority. Every honest assessment compounds self-trust. Every committed action reinforces big trust. That is the key. Now consider emotion. Emotions are data, not danger. They are signals guiding you to alignment with values. They indicate where you are honoring yourself and where you are not. Most people suppress emotion. They ignore signals. They react impulsively or avoid discomfort. That erodes trust. That erodes clarity. That erodes big trust. Instead, interpret emotion as information. Use it to guide action. Respond intentionally. Reinforce daily habits that strengthen self-trust, regardless of emotional fluctuations. You have a choice. Now, let us talk about adaptability. Big trust is not rigidity. It is not blind discipline. It is the ability to adjust, pivot, and respond while maintaining alignment with core values. Most people mistake consistency for stubbornness. They believe trust requires perfection or rigidity. They resist adaptation. They cling to fixed plans. That is weakness. That is self-doubt disguised as control. Instead, remain disciplined yet flexible. Maintain your commitments. Adapt strategy when necessary. Act daily in alignment with values. Compound small adjustments into long-term resilience. That is the key. Now, consider micro stretches. Each day, take one action that challenges fear, discomfort, or habit. Micro stretches build capability. Micro stretches rewire nervous systems. Micro stretches transform hesitation into evidence of competence. Most people avoid discomfort. They seek ease. They remain stagnant. They convince themselves that growth is rare or exceptional. That is false. Growth is cumulative. Growth is daily. Growth is built in repeated stretches beyond comfort. You have a choice. Now, let us examine accountability to others. Big trust is amplified when you extend discipline to promises made publicly. Share commitments with people who respect growth, not complacency. Align action with responsibility. Consistency observed externally reinforces internal trust. Most people avoid visibility. They hide uncertainty. They avoid challenge. They postpone discipline. That is weakness. That is self-doubt disguised as humility. Instead, act consistently in front of others. Reinforce promises. Demonstrate capability. Project reliability. Every visible action compounds big trust internally and externally. That is the key. Now, consider the compounding effect of small wins. Each daily act of integrity, discipline, and courage is a deposit into your trust account. Every promise kept reinforces belief. Every deliberate choice strengthens self-trust. Every courageous action compounds into big trust. Most people wait for grand achievements to validate confidence. They underestimate the power of cumulative daily action. They discount the small, repeated choices that matter most. That is weakness. That is illusion. That erodes big trust. Instead, focus on daily deposits. Make promises. Keep promises. Reflect and improve. Repeat consistently without fail. You have a choice. Now, consider self-leadership integration. Lead yourself before leading others. Anchor your actions in values. Act deliberately, consistently, and visibly. Use daily rituals to reinforce clarity, capability, and momentum. Stretch daily to reinforce courage. Respond intentionally to emotion. Adapt to circumstances without compromising principles. Every integrated habit compounds big trust. Every repeated act strengthens capability. Every disciplined choice amplifies confidence, influence, and resilience. That is the key. Now, consider long-term transformation. Big trust is not built in a week. It is not built in a month. It is built daily, over time, without excuses. Small acts compound into massive results. Daily discipline becomes automatic. Self-trust becomes unshakable. Confidence becomes habitual. Courage becomes instinctive. Most people quit too early. They expect rapid transformation. They neglect consistent daily action. They underestimate compounding. That is failure. That is hesitation disguised as patience. Instead, commit to the practice. Commit to daily discipline. Commit to repeated courage. Commit to consistently building big trust, one deliberate action at a time. You have a choice. Now, consider reflection and iteration. And each day, reviewing commitments. Ask, did I honor myself today? Ask, did I act with discipline, courage, and integrity? Ask, what will I adjust tomorrow? Reflection reinforces learning. Reflection compounds momentum. Reflection transforms ordinary actions into extraordinary growth. That is the key. Finally, anchor this chapter in practice. Identify 3 small promises to yourself each day. Commit to keeping them, no matter what. Act with discipline, courage, and alignment. Reflect at the end of the day. Adjust and repeat tomorrow. Small promises kept build unshakable confidence. Small daily actions compound into big trust. Daily discipline transforms hesitation into certainty. Daily practice transforms doubt into self-trust. Daily courage transforms fear into action. You have a choice. Act deliberately every day. Reinforce trust in yourself. Build confidence incrementally. Lead yourself first, then lead others. Stretch consistently, adapt intentionally, and reflect honestly. Compound momentum into unstoppable, unshakable big trust. That is the key. As this final chapter closes, remember this: big trust is built daily. It is earned, not imagined. It is reinforced by small, consistent, disciplined actions. It is reflected in courage, consistency, and self-leadership. Every day, you have a choice. Choose action. Choose discipline. Choose alignment. Choose courage. Choose to build big trust today, tomorrow, and every day thereafter. And with this, the journey of self-doubt, fear, hesitation, and uncertainty ends. The journey of big trust, self-leadership, courage, and unshakable confidence begins. You are capable. You are disciplined. You are trustworthy. You are ready. Act now. Build big trust daily. Lead yourself. Lead others. Transform your life. OUTRO of book. Self-doubt will never disappear on its own. It waits for hesitation. It waits for silence. It waits for you to hand your power away. Big trust is not believing you'll never fail. It's trusting yourself even if you do. Trusting that you can decide. Trusting that you can adapt. Trusting that you can recover. trusting that you can lead yourself forward again and again. You don't need more motivation. You don't need more validation. You need self-trust in motion. So here's your challenge. Make one clear decision today. Take one uncomfortable action. Keep one promise to yourself. And tomorrow do it again. Because everything you want sits on the other side of big trust. If this audiobook helped you, don't keep it to yourself. Subscribe. Share it with someone who's doubting their power. And remember this, you are not broken. You are not behind. You are building big trust,